Here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another ASEA Global Expansion Team Zoom. We have an incredible Zoom prepared for you tonight. We have the amazing Ed Weens all the way, well, he's usually from North Carolina, but today he's from Virginia. So Ed, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Cindy. Thank you.
I see you have a map on your body today. So I know that one of your mantras is that you don't want to point to an office and say, that's where I work. You point to a globe and say,
Yep.
That's where I work. So you're working today from Virginia, but you can work from pretty much anywhere, can't you?
We've been working from Atlantic Beach, North Carolina this morning to Richmond, Virginia tonight. And yeah, it's a pretty portable business. So, you know, our business name, actually, yours is Atomic Wellness. Ours is Worldwide Wellness. And so anything that's got the global, worldwide kind of look to it's my thing.
That's great. So you were born, or I don't know if you were born in Alaska, but you were brought up in Alaska, weren't you, Ed?
Born in Alaska, prior to it becoming a state, when it was still kind of a foreign, well, it was a U.S. territory. Trivia question: when did it become a state?
No idea.
1959.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Who else became a state that year?
Hawaii, I don't know.
Hawaii.
Is that hey, got that one right?
There was a flag with only 49 stars for a short period, less than a year, because it went from 48 to 50 stars in 1959.
Okay, good trivia to know. So now I know you were born as or brought up as a minister's son, right?
Yeah.
And how the heck did you go from ministry in a church to ministry on the globe with Worldwide Wellness? Tell us a little bit about why you entered the network marketing space.
Well, you know, my parents, of course, were pretty global thinkers anyway. Even in the back in the 40s, my mother really felt she wanted to go to Africa, but when she finished college, they would not send a single woman to Africa back then, and so she actually went to Alaska in the late 40s. And then met my dad in Idaho, where they were both Idaho natives. Went back to Alaska, and so I grew up just with always some sense of the world at large. I remember we had a game table when I was a kid, and there was a map, a U.S. map, and I think a world map on another part of the table. So I mean, I looked at maps my whole life, and just memorized countries, capitals of countries, and all the capitals of the states. And so I've always sort of had a global look at the world anyway. Went to South America when I was 12, and kind of almost all my teenage years were spent there. And there, of course, a lot of my friends were from all over the world. And when I was, but in between Alaska and Peru, from when I was like 9, 10, and 11, we lived in Idaho, and we attended a church pastored by a guy named Emmanuel Rohn, spelled R-O-H-N. He had a son named Jim. Some of you are kind of fast forwarding here. Yes, the famous Jim Rohn. And so once in a while he would come to town, and he would always be acknowledged. And so I actually, met Jim when in the early 60s. In fact, I was at a network marketing event a few years ago, and it was a guy being recognized for 50 years in the industry, and talked about his early days with Jim Rohn. And I saw him in the lobby afterwards. I said, I'm probably the only guy here who met Jim Rohn before you did. And he kind of looked, he's really? I told him that story. He says, yeah, I guess you did. But, I didn't realize who he was until later learned my dad and he, as teenagers living kind of in the same area, fished together once in a while. So, I have a lot of history kind of going back with friends and family who grew up with him. But then when I was a senior in high school, Cindy, I walked into the garage of some family friends of my parents. And I knew he was a builder and a real estate sort of a handyman kind of a guy. And I looked around his garage, and there were shelves with products. And I asked him, I says, what is all this? He says, these are products that we sell. And I said, well, you make money when you sell them. And of course, that kind of struck a chord with me. I mean, my first job ever that I remember getting paid to do was selling boiled crab door to door in a fishing village in Alaska. My dad would catch them, mom would boil them, and I'd sell the crabs, crabs for 35 cents for the big ones and 25 cents for the small ones. And then I sold newspapers on the street corners of Juneau, Alaska when I was like 8, 9 years old. So, sold greeting cards. I mean, the idea of selling something that people needed and wanted and getting paid to do that it just fit with me because it was, if I worked harder, I could earn more. And so when I asked this guy what his product was, and he told me, he said, then he said something magical. And he said, this is what he said. He said, and if we recruit other people to sell these products, we get paid a percentage when they sell. And I thought, you have got to be kidding me. There's a concept like that. I just was back from South America. I didn't know anything like that. And so that just kind of planted a seed. Wasn't until sometime later I was introduced to network marketing. I was actually applying for a job that I'll tell you, this is a little bit of a sideline, an introductory story. I had just got married. It was early 70s. I was in college, trying to eke out an existence and pay my school bill. And so me and another guy we had interviews to sell men's clothing at a men's clothing store downtown Portland, Oregon. And so we're walking in the door in this big department store, and this guy stepped out literally and stopped us on the way in. He says, "You look like a couple of sharp young guys. Are you looking for a job?" Now you have to understand, Cindy, when you're in Bible college and you're immersed in that world and you need a job and you're walking in for this interview and somebody steps out of anonymous person stops you. I mean, I looked at my friend and we thought, is this guy an angel? How did he know? And we said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we're on our way in here to apply for a job. Oh, listen, he says, listen, come over here. I got a deal for you. And so he spun this yarn about coming that night to a restaurant. Are you married? Yeah, we both just got married this summer. Bring your wives. There's a free dinner. Well, he had me a free dinner. I mean, when you're barely making it and you're eating, wherever you can scrape together in the cupboard, and somebody says free dinner, I was in. So he said, come on, free dinner. And we got a presentation. So we went down, had the free dinner, went to the back room. And the walls were literally vibrating. People were up on their chairs, literally up on their chairs, rah, rah, rah. And they were spinning this deal. And I just got to tell you, thank God I didn't have $3,000 or I'd have spent it that night. And I would have probably lost it all because that company, the guy ended up going to prison, but it was one of the early versions of network marketing before it was even defined as legal as a business. And I would have crashed and burned with Costcott. You can look it up, Costcott and Glenn Turner. So that was my introduction to network marketing. And then eventually I could have filed it away as something I would probably never want to come close to. But I did end up dipping my toe in the industry probably in the 80s. And I think part of it, Cindy, was that I just had ambition to do some things that I knew I could never get a nonprofit organization, which was kind of in my world at that point. I could never get them to pay for it. I could never get a church budget to approve to do the kind of things that I wanted to do. And so I saw network marketing when I really kind of began to see it as a legitimate industry. I saw it as a way to create the resources so that I could really live my life on purpose. And that's what's kind of propelled me then ever since. And it's been my full-time career track now for about 27 years. You and I met sometime in the mid 90s, late 90s.
Right.
And so, yeah, I've just seen it as a vehicle to generate. It's obviously there's so many different things today that kind of fly under the network marketing umbrella. I mean, you name it, travel, telecommunications, but to have a product that is so empowering and compelling and efficient like ours is, added to the fact that it's network marketing. It's just been the perfect venue for me because it's allowed me to really sprout my wings and do what I want to do.
So you talk about going into this friend's garage and seeing all these products. Yeah. Obviously, the internet has changed how network marketing works. Yeah, so talk a little bit about that. I know that when Virtus, when Virtus was playing golf with the foursome, then when they turned down the offer from the pharmaceutical company, this guy named Mark said, "How are you going to market these molecules anyway? This is a perfect product for network marketing." And Virtus said, "Network marketing, it's not a very professional distribution method. Isn't that something you do out of the back of your car or your garage?" And the guy said, "What, have you been living under a rock? Go do your proper due diligence on the business model of network marketing." And Virtus did that and found out it was just people telling people about something they're passionate about. And that's how this company got started. So that's why he decided to go with a network marketing model. But Talk about how the network marketing model or the business model of network marketing has changed since the internet came around.
Well, you know, the core principle is word of mouth is word of mouth. Word of mouth has been the guiding force of commerce since humans began to do business. I read a business book recently in the conjunction of a men's mastermind group that was a part of this past year, and didn't realize that really conventional advertising wasn't even really a thing until about the mid 1800s, maybe early to mid 1800s. Prior to that, word of mouth was the only source of spreading the news about business. And so every artisan, every marketer of any kind of craft or farm produce or whatever, it was all word of mouth throughout the history of human interaction until methods of more broad distribution of advertising came about in the 1800s, maybe early 1800s. And so I just really stepped back and looked at the whole concept of word of mouth. I lived in South America where the Inca civilization thrived, and you could see the trails up the side today still, the trails of the up the sides of the Andes where these runners would run, and they would carry a rope tied into a different configuration of knots, hand it off to the next runner, and take the message to the next, the next wherever it was going. And that was word of mouth back in like 1400s. I've seen the Pony Express stations in the US across the country where that was how messages had to be distributed. And of course, electronic wiretapping kind of became a thing. And then the telephones, of course. And so I was doing this business reasonably successfully in the age of payphones and fax machines. In fact, I was on the phone just a couple of days ago with someone that you and I know. He's the former president of the company that you and I were a part of, and he's got his own company now. We were talking about something completely different. And we were just talking about that very thing, how the internet has changed our industry. He says, I can remember with the company that he was the director of marketing of, he says, we would send out every Friday night, he says, we would send out to our top leaders 40 and 50 pages of fax reports. And I remember our company had a device off in the corner of the office about the size of an upright freezer. And that was what they called the NEAT system. It was an acronym that meant touch tone system. And so you could punch in orders and so forth on your phone. That was cutting edge. I can remember being up there and seeing reports being, printed off and piling on the floor, stacks of reports. I knew where the best payphones were along the I-5 corridor between Seattle and Portland. The restaurants that had payphones back out of the way, away from the bar, where you could stop off and do three-way calls, where you didn't have a lot of phone, interference. When it became possible to have a phone in your car, I mean, that was just an unbelievable advantage to be able to turn that kind of drive time into actual production time. Today, I can remember when the whole concept of being able to use video teleconferencing, I was living out in the country in Idaho, and people were trying to get us as leaders to spend, I was gonna have to spend $10,000 to get a certain kind of phone line run to my home that could handle the kind of data traffic to be able to do video conferencing that today we do from a laptop and a phone, from hotel rooms and cars and whatever. So, what the technological backdrop for us has done today, Cindy, is just facilitated the growth and the spread of word of mouth. Word of mouth hasn't changed, but just the way the message never has changed throughout human history. The methods have changed, and the methods have propelled our business. We had Jörg Hoche, the new global revenue officer, on the other day talking in the Philippines, and he talked about his history, 30 some years in the industry. And he used a term that I think is so appropriate for where we are. He says, this industry is crisis proof. The industry is crisis proof. He's been through it through the crash of the stock market and so forth. And we've been through it now through a year of COVID, that goes along with that. And yet we flourished. It's because of communication tools like this. This is an amazing, there's never been a better time in the history of human interaction, for a word of mouth driven business model like there is today. So yeah, it's a dream come true business model.
Yeah. So what happens is the internet comes about, and then a little bit more time goes by, and then you have a company called ASEA that doesn't say, hey, let's start a network marketing company. What do you want to sell? It says, how do we get this technology in the hands of the most amount of people? Let's do it through word of mouth. Let's do it through network marketing. And then you have this pandemic that hits, and people are looking for a way to become healthier or to protect their health, and for a way to earn money from home and possibly remotely, from anywhere, where they can do what you've talked about, point to the globe and say, that's my office. So talk a little bit about that, because it's almost like all this time has prepared the world for network marketing, right?
Yeah, it really has. And I just got to hand it to Virtus and of course Tyler and all the folks that were involved in the inception of this company because it was a paradigm shift for them. Virtus came from the generation that would have probably looked at or heard about network marketing when it was in its infancy back in the maybe 60s, 70s, 80s, when it was still kind of the Wild West. And in fact, there were, until sometime in the mid 70s, there were no rules to even govern how this industry should work. And so consequently, there was a lot of abuse and there was a lot of crazy things. And so for them to against the backdrop, that kind of business acumen, to be able to make the shift and embrace the network marketing business model was a really fortuitous thing for us. And to bring this kind of a product, I think maybe you or Bo, and I know some of the others were on a panel discussion we had a little over a year ago. And I just kind of called a recording of that, the Voices of Experience, because I think between all of us on that panel, we had about 300 years combined experience in the industry. If you were to add up the size of the organizations that we all represented, it was literally in the hundreds of thousands. And if you were to add up the combined earning performance of that group, it was tens of millions. And collectively, we just said, based on that experience, based on our years of seeing this industry and seeing the good, bad, and the ugly, and the real ugly of it all, this is the company that truly we've really always hoped we could find. It's not perfect, but it certainly is striving for perfection and striving to improve, every single day. And that's just a rare combination. There's a lot of companies in this industry. The genesis of a company is really important. I mean, foundations in anything have a lot to do with how the superstructure is built over time. It's the foundation. The foundation of most companies, a lot of companies, are some guys getting together with a business idea, and they come up with a business model. They go looking for a product because you have to have a product or a service to legitimize the business. Here was completely flip-flop. This was a technology that was groundbreaking, very unique, could have come to market some other way, but specifically hitchhiked to this business model because it's the most efficient way. I mean, what other people sometimes will shy away from this when they find out network marketing. I'm saying, how else could we market this? How could we possibly bring it to the market any better, any more efficiently, where not only is it providing humankind with this breakthrough product, but allows us to participate. I tell the Filipino audience that I'm with every single week, I said, we always have a product presentation. I said, there's two sides of the coin, two sides to every coin. There's the product side, there's the business side, but because we have what we have as a product, it allows us to participate in the business model here. And we simply, the simple way to look at this is we get to be the radio, the television, the newspaper, the billboard. And, I can answer for our household. I would rather they pay me than pay USA Today. I'd rather they pay those conventional advertising giants don't care about my priorities in life. They don't care about my kids and my grandkids and my dreams and my goals and my projects that I want to do. This model allows me to be a benefit to folks with the product, but at the same time generate the resource to be able to do what's important to me and to Rebecca, and along the way to empower other folks to do well. I love what we all learned from Zig Ziglar. Help enough people get what they want, you can have anything in your life that you want. I'm on a project now with his son, Tom. And when Tom Ziglar comes on the screen, you'll see behind him his dad and that quote, that you help enough people get what they want, you can have anything in life that you want. So this is the perfect, it's the perfect business model for what we have, Cindy. Nothing else would work as efficiently.
So Ed, I know that the network marketing piece was not a big hurdle for you to get over because you understand the model and appreciate the model. But there's another piece. So some people have to get over that hurdle and understand how that business model works. But the other piece is people say, what is this? Salt water from Salt Lake City. I mean,
Yeah.
so how did you get over that hurdle? I know you came from another network
Yeah.
marketing company,
Yeah.
and when you were introduced to this, you're just like, what? Well, wait a minute, what?
Well, I didn't get over that hurdle very quickly. You were a whole lot quicker getting over that hurdle than I was. Because when I heard about it from the same folks you heard about it from, I love Chuck and Tammy, great people. I often, introduce them by saying this: in your career, you often have to work. You have to work with people that you don't ever want to have to spend time with outside the workplace, and you have to interact with people that you may never want your spouse to have to meet, and you don't want your kids to ever be anywhere near them. Well, the people that comprised the field leadership, and of course even corporate, but back then I only knew the field leadership. I knew the Chuck and Tammys, and I knew Denny and Tom and Trish and Bob. They're the kind of people that I wanted my family to be around. I've vacationed with the gay. I've spent a couple of times a week on a houseboat with Chuck and Tammy. You better get along when you're on a houseboat for a week. And so I had a lot of respect for them, but I had done products for 15 years. And I didn't want to do products anymore. And especially with a product like this, I thought, first of all, the company was new. And I thought, they're just, the statistics for new companies in this industry are very poor. I mean, most of them don't have their second birthday. I didn't want to spend time or energy on a company that I thought might not be around. I was happy for Chuck and Tammy that they were excited, but I thought, come on, salt water from Salt Lake City. Come on, I was born at night, but not last night. And, but I just reserved judgment, but I stood back at a distance and I watched this company for almost 5 years. And I finally decided, they're still around. Something must be working. And I got to hand it to Chuck and Tammy and to Denny. I mean, they called once in a while. They even came to town once in a while, and they were just gentle and tried to encourage and fan the flame a little bit. But it wasn't until some circumstances in our world shifted that kind of put my back against the wall, and I had to reevaluate some things. And there's other parts to that story. But I finally made the trip to Salt Lake City. Thankfully, when the call first came 11 years ago, I was newly married to Rebecca. You kind of know the story. My first wife had passed away, and I was married to Rebecca. And I said, listen, you're a nurse. You're a smart researcher. You've got the ability to ask questions and kind of see through fluff. You got a pretty good BS detector. Why don't you go to Salt Lake City and check this out? So she did. And she came back and said, well, I met the people and heard the scientists and the doctors and signed us up. So, we enrolled, got some product for a little bit, but truthfully, I thought, I've had a lot of good, healthy products to drink through the years. This certainly, so I was mixing it with fruit juice and all kinds of things to try to make it palatable. I just didn't get it. And it's not, I say that to my shame. I really wish I would have engaged back then, but I allowed my ignorance to translate into poor judgment that lasted about 5 years until I finally figured out it was a real deal.
So what was the defining moment? When did you realize, oh my goodness, this is for real? I mean, you watched it from a distance and just thought, no way. But then what happened where you went, oh my goodness?
All right, I'll tell you the story. Some of this will be a little woo-woo for some of you, but it's my story. Rebecca's a nurse. She had to attend a class in San Antonio, Texas, with her nursing career. And I went along because, I was still in network marketing. I was doing something different. I went off on a different tangent, again, not wanting to do products. And so I was exploring other things. And truthfully, during that time, Cindy, I looked at a lot of companies. I mean, I had companies fly me in. I sat in boardrooms with founders, with field leaders. I attended events on both ends of the country. People shipped me products. They shipped me selection of product, VIP packages of products. I would go to Rebecca and I would say, you know what, take these vitamins, drink this juice, use this skincare. And thankfully she went along and was a pretty good evaluator and give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, mostly thumbs down. And so I was just, I was looking, but I was denying the reality of what really was in front of me. And so I went along to this trip to San Antonio, and I got a good friend that pastors a cowboy church down there. And he says, hey, Ed, I hear you're in town. Why don't you come and speak for me on Sunday? So on Saturday Saturday, I'm kind of getting my thoughts together like you're supposed to when you got to speak on a Sunday. And so my thoughts were kind of on the law of the harvest. I mean, the principle of planting seed and reaping a harvest and preparing for a harvest and being a good steward of the seed and just, all the kind of thoughts that this is the woo-woo part, Cindy. I don't typically say God spoke to me, but I'm telling you what, on that Saturday, God spoke to me. And the thundering voice I heard in my spirit was this: you're seeking a harvest here, there, everywhere. And I've given you the seeds to a great harvest, and you're being negligent. Why should I give you more when you're not taking care of what I've already given you? I mean, I was like a knife through my heart. And I thought, my God, that's a message about ASEA. I called Chuck and Tammy the next day and I said, okay, I give. What do I got to do? Tell me about this. Explain this to me. And that's when the shift happened. And I realized that I had been very, very negligent of a very valuable resource that had been placed into my hands that I had not taken good care of. And I've done my darndest to make up for that in the last 6.5 years. So, but that was the turning point.
Good for you. Yeah. I call ASEA a spark of the divine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's really in so many ways quantum physics, and it comes to an answer to prayer for so many people. It's just a fascinating project. I tell you what,
it's a common thing, Cindy, that people pray desperately for answers in life and they miss them because they don't recognize the package they come in. I mean, it's right there. And I almost did that. I shudder to think today, had I continued to ignore this, where we would be.
So you got that message, and obviously you honored that message loud and clear, but was there a product experience along the way, or were there things that started to happen in a pattern where it solidified your belief?
Over time, but for me, it was never about, I've never approached this with the mindset that I know some people do. I hear this frequently, I know you do. Say, well, let me try the product, and if it works for me, then maybe I'll believe and I'll tell somebody else. And when I hear that now, I try to be gentle with people, but I'll say, let me just tell you something. You're special, but you're not that special. This product it's not gonna all of a sudden decide not to work for you. You're biologically the same as everybody else. You're no different. Now, I'd also heard Tammy Gates' story. Tammy wanted this to work for her right away. And it wasn't until 11 months later. But in the interim, she began to share this. That's when we heard about it. You heard about it. And of course, we know the story there. So to me, it was never about whether or not I had any dramatic experience, because I knew that the science was real. The product was legit. You could not be at that time, a 5-year-old company. Now, look we're 11 years old now. If you're going to rely on word of mouth to grow your business, you better have a product that delivers. You couldn't become an 11-year-old company in 33 countries, one of the top 50 network marketing companies in the world, with a product that doesn't work. It just logically, think about it. It can't happen. So it's never been about a product experience. Now, have we had them? Absolutely. My first real cognizant experience is, I'm an old surfer. I spent a lot of years in the sun growing up, a lot of skin damage. And so I have a gal that's a skin specialist, and she checks me over every once in a while. And she stopped me one day in the lobby of our church and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Your skin. I can see something different on your skin." Her trained eye could see something before I noticed it. And so that was, I guess, probably the first aha. But again, I just want to emphasize, it's not about whether or not I have a product experience. That's the most selfish, arrogant posture you could possibly take. Now, it's great if you've had that experience, but no one individual today is the validator of whether or not this product is legit. Come on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we had some, turning of the head experiences that we just thought, good grief, if that's what we have in our hands, holy smokes, this is huge, and then we just got validation after validation after validation after validation.
We've had it. Obviously, Rebecca's story. I mean, there's never going to be another story out there that tops Rebecca's story.
Right.
I mean, that's just, go to realredoxresults.com and look at video number 53. That's an abbreviated version of her story.
That's right. Well, Ed, we're coming to the bottom of the half hour, and it's just been really great to get all your insight into, so many aspects of ASEA, because it fits the bill in so many ways. what would you say to somebody that's looking at this business for the first time, and they may have lost their job, they might be looking for a way of supplementing their income, they may be looking for a plan B in case something happens in this very shaky world right now. What would you say to somebody that wants to know if this is real? What would you say to them?
Well, there's so much validation out there right now, but I guess the big challenge is just please try to grasp that maybe for once in your life, you're in the right place at the right time. Now, everybody dreams of that and thinks that being in the right place at the right time is one of the keys to success. That's only part of it. You have to know you're there when you're there and take action. I'll just give you a quick story. You're a skier, ski slope experienced person, Cindy. I was an old surfer. I came back from South America in the 60s, and I would go with my friends up in the snow, and they would hop on their skis. I would go find the toboggan and try to go down the hill standing up on a toboggan, thinking there's got to be a way to combine surfing and skiing. They just kind of, you're standing on this board going down. Now, there's a guy named Burton who had the same idea the same year. He came out with a Snurfer, the very first version of what we now know as snowboarding. And he's considered the father of snowboarding. When you watch the Olympics or these X Games and you see the boards flip up, it says Burton on the bottom of the board. It should say Wings on the bottom of the board because I thought of it. Just didn't do anything about it back then. So you've got to know you're there and take action. Probably one of the greatest examples of that is I had a chance at a banquet in Seattle, Washington years ago to introduce the keynote speaker fundraising banquet, and his name was Art Linkletter. Okay. Most people over 40 have heard of him. If you're under 40, he was a household name in television back in the 60s, 70s in the US. And he loved to tell this story. And I heard him tell it personally to a small group of our donors before the banquet. So it was fun to hear him tell what I had read about. But he told about his good friend, Walt Disney, who picked him up one day and drove him out in the country east of Los Angeles, out in the orange groves. And he invited him to invest with them in building an amusement park out there. And here's how Art said it. He says, I laughed at Walt all the way back to town. And I said, Walt, you're crazy. Nobody's going to drive clear out in the country to ride a merry-go-round. He says, I missed out on a chance to be a part owner of Disneyland. Okay, that's a real classic, right time, right place, not getting it story. So just know that with ASEA, you're in the most unbelievable place at the right time with a company that is going to change. This is a game changer company. It's a game changer technology. It's a game changer company. You're here. Just grasp it. Don't be one of those that looks back down the road and say, gee, I heard about this back in 2021. I should have done something about it. You're there now. You're there. This is a really unique time and place in history. And don't miss the boat on this. This is a big deal. It just happens to be packaged in a way that not just the institutional people, the big banks, the big companies can benefit from. You and I as individuals get a chance to participate in this. And that's really, truly the opportunity of a lifetime. And yeah, don't miss this.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, Ed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time, and we wish the very best to your family. I know it sounds like they're going through some tough stuff in Virginia, so we'll keep them in our prayers and make sure everybody stays healthy and happy and prosperous out there. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate this. And we'll post this on our Atomic Wellness Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. So if anybody that didn't get a chance to hear it live would like to hear it, they can get access to it there. So Ed, thank you so much. And please give Rebecca our love.
I'll do it. Thank you, Cindy.
All righty. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.